Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'll quickly take a look at how game week 20 went. I'll take a look at my team selection for game week 21. Take a look at an updated watch list, and I'll share some transfer tips because there are midweek cup games before the game week 21 deadline. There's also a possible double game week coming up soon. And as always, at the end of the video, I'll take a look at some possible captain candidates for the next game week. So let's have a look. Game week 20 turned out to be a decent game week for me, 71 points, and Anderson is coming in for Kai Havertz with 1 point due to Fulham conceding 2 goals against Ipswich. Kirkis, he outscored all my other defender. Lovely game from Kirkis with 12 points. In attack, I actually did decent. Mo Salah 7 points. Luckily for me, he did not get more. I actually think that Mo Salah was a bit lucky to get the penalty and score against Man United, but it is what it is. So my captain Isaac and Mo Salah, they leveled with 7 points each. So yeah, well played. Eze, he got an assist. Cole Palmer scored 1 game week too late. I captained Cole Palmer last game week. Really frustrating when Mo Salah scored 16 points. But my transfer in this game week, Gordon, he got a goal. As mentioned, Kai Havertz, he did not play. He's still ill. Hopefully he'll be ready for game week 21. Joao Pedro, really satisfying. Tough game for Brighton, and Joao Pedro playing against Arsenal, but he got a penalty, so 9 points from Joao Pedro. So altogether, a really solid game week with 71 points. Let me know in the comments down below, did you get a green arrow in game week 20? But for now, let's take a look at my team selection for the next game week. This will probably be my team for game week 21. Kirk is the star in defense in game week 20. He will probably be on my bench playing against Chelsea, while my other defenders actually have decent fixtures. Masraoui, he looked good against Liverpool. He is playing right wing back at the moment, so hopefully he can deliver both a clean sheet and attacking returns against Southampton. Gabriel, he has maybe the toughest fixture playing against Spurs. They have done really poor when it comes to their defending, but they are still really attacking, so probably not the best fixture. But Gabriel, he has so much attacking threat, so he will start. Lewis Hall, really good form for Newcastle and Hall, so he will play the home game against Wolves. Some decent fixtures in midfield and attack in game week 21. Gordon, he will play against Wolves, of course. Mo Salah against Nottingham Forest. Palmer against Bournemouth, and Eze, he will play against Leicester. Up front, Isaac against Wolves. Joao Pedro against Ipswich. And Havertz, he will play against what I just recently said was a defensively poor Spurs team. So, as mentioned, some decent fixtures in here. Isaac with a home game. Palmer playing at home against Bournemouth, and Salah, he is Salah, but as I'll show you in the captain section later on in this video, those fixtures are actually not that good as it looks on paper. But first, let's have a look at which players we should target going forward by taking a look at the watch list. Before going through the watch list, I just want to remind you that there are a lot of cup games before the game week 21 deadline, so some teams will even play 2 games both in the FA Cup and the League Cup, so my advice would be to hold your transfers as long as possible. Another reason to hold your transfers this game week if you don't have any big fires is that there might be an announcement about a double game week soon. The Everton against Liverpool game in game week 17 got postponed because of bad weather, and this has been rumored to take place in game week 24 or game week 25. So it might be a good idea to have some transfers going into that game week to target players with a double fixture. Also remember that the next deadline is on a Tuesday, so there is a midweek deadline on Tuesday the 14th, so hold your transfers as long as possible. I'll be live with a Q&A on Monday, the night before the deadline, and I also try to have a deadline stream a couple of hours before the deadline on Tuesday the 14th. If you need a new defender ahead of game week 21, Lewis Hall would be my preferred option. He is looking really good when Newcastle are in possession. He's storming down that left-hand side, and he is due for more attacking returns going forward. Newcastle also in fine form, been the best defensive team recently, and they also have, as you can see on the screen, really solid fixtures going forward. So Wolves at home, Bournemouth at home, and Southampton away. I do believe that Newcastle and Lewis Hall will get more clean sheets and potentially more attacking returns as well. Next on the list is Munoz. Decent fixtures for Palace as well, and Munoz, he is really attacking. He has an expected goal involvement of 1.31, which is really solid for a defender. The last player on this list is Anderson. He is playing for Fulham, only priced at 4.2, and that's the reason why I have included him on this watch list. If you need to free up funds, or if you want a budget defender, maybe in some kind of rotation, I definitely think that Anderson is worth 4.2. Big threat at set pieces, and Fulham, they also have good fixtures going forward, playing against West Ham, then Leicester, and then Man United at home. After watching the Liverpool against Man United game on Sunday, I actually think that the Man United fixture probably should be grey when it comes to fixture difficulty for Fulham, but Fulham, they are really good at home, and they might well keep a clean sheet at home against Man United in game week 23. When it comes to Fulham defenders, Anthony Robinson is probably still the best option. I also like Castani, but he is not nailed on. He will probably start the next game weeks going forward, but we know that he is only playing because of an injury to Kenny Tete. As mentioned, my favorite is Anthony Robinson, but his price at the moment, he's priced at 5 million, so I actually think that Anderson is better value at the moment. Next out is the midfielders. Anthony Gordon, as with Lewis Hall, really good fixtures and really good team form as well. I do believe that Anthony Gordon can do well going forward. They have a game against Wolves, Bournemouth and Southampton, and I actually think that a triple up on Newcastle at the moment is a good idea. Next on the list is SA, a bit of a differential, only selected by 8%. He is Crystal Palace talisman, sharing penalties with Mateta, and hopefully SA can take the next one. They have a game against Leicester away, really good fixture in game week 21, and then they have West Ham United and Brentford at home. The last player on this list is Mbeumo, a really good game week. In game week 20, scored 17 points against Southampton. Kind of concerned about Brentford and their fixtures going forward. In game week 21, they are playing against Man City, and Man City, they are starting to pick up some form again, so it might be a tough fixture. And of course, game week 22, playing against Liverpool, top of the league and really solid defensively. They have a away game against Crystal Palace in game week 23. So the fixtures for Mbeumo and Brentford is a bit of a concern, and his ownership as well, owned by 32% of the managers, so not to be considered as a differential, but if you're satisfied with your rank, it's probably a good idea to bring in Mbeumo. We know that he's a really good FPL asset, nailed on and on penalties, what's not to like. Another player that deserves a mention is Bruno Fernandes. Looked good in game week 20 against Liverpool, and Man United have a really good fixture in game week 21 against Southampton. So if you have the funds, Bruno Fernandes might also be a good transfer in for game week 21. So last out, the forwards. This is a mixed list with some expensive, some cheaper options, some differentials and some very well owned assets. My favorite, if you don't own him, is Alexander Isak. He is on fire, have scored in 7 consecutive game weeks, and he is actually nailed on penalties and a decent captain option in almost every game week. So as mentioned, if you don't own him, my advice would be to bring in Isak at the moment, but if you want a differential, I'd advise you to take a look at Mateta. He scored in game week 20, only selected by 3%. On penalties, as mentioned, sharing them with SA, and Crystal Palace have decent fixtures going forward as well. Chris Wood is another solid option, selected by 31% of the managers, so not a differential. A tough game in game week 21, so if you want Chris Wood, it's probably a good idea to wait until game week 22. Another player that deserves a mention but didn't fit into the list is Raul Jimenez. He did really well in game week 20, scored a brace against Ipswich. He is suddenly on penalties. We all thought that Andreas would take their penalties, but Raul Jimenez took 2 penalties against Ipswich while Andreas Pereira was on the pitch. So this makes Raul Jimenez a bit more interesting, but there's always this minutes concern when it comes to Raul Jimenez while Muniz is fit. But as mentioned, Raul Jimenez is also a really good option, so if you want to bring him in, he's definitely a decent buy at the moment. Mo Salah, he has been captained by so many in recent game weeks and will probably be the most selected player in game week 21 as well. I'm tempted to take a punt to go against him once more. When we take a look at Nottingham Forest, they are really impressive when it comes to their defensive stats. So they kept 3 clean sheets in the last 4 game weeks, only conceded 1 goal. Big chances conceded only 2, and shots on target 11, which is 3rd best in the league. When we take a look at expected goals conceded, Nottingham Forest, they have actually only 2.92, which is only beaten by Newcastle. So let's have a look at some other captains as well. Cole Palmer, always a contender for the captaincy, nailed on and on penalties for Chelsea. But when we take a look at their opponent in game week 21, it's a bit like with Nottingham Forest. Bournemouth, they are actually pretty impressive. They kept 3 clean sheets as well in the last 4 game weeks, only conceded 2 goals, 6 big chances conceded and 17 shots on targets. Bournemouth have an expected goals conceded of 4.55, which is 6th best in the league. So Bournemouth at home is probably not as good as it looks on paper, but I'll have a look at another captain candidate as well. Alexander Isak, as mentioned earlier in this video, scored in 7 consecutive games. Really good form together with his teammates in Newcastle. But when we consider that Wolves at home on paper looks really decent, when we take a closer look at the stats, I'm not that convinced to just put the armband on Isak. So for the last 4 game weeks, Wolves have actually kept 2 clean sheets, only conceded 4 goals, 8 big chances against them in 4 games. That's pretty good, and they have only conceded 14 shots on target. Expected goals conceded for Wolves is 4.68, which is 7th best in the league. So when it comes to the most popular captain candidates for game week 21, Isak, Palmer and Salah all nailed on and on penalties for their teams. They actually have a pretty tough fixture in game week 21. Their opponents are especially good defensively, so the captaincy for game week 21 is probably not that straightforward as it looks on paper, but please let me know who is your favorite for the captaincy in game week 21.